pressure of like the modern day world always striving to like, be the best and show up and success and career and family. Like, how are we supposed to do all of this?
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Nourished Inside Out. I am here with Grace Grossman today, and she is a yogi, a writer, and a mental health coach. Thank you for joining us today, Grace.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's been a long time coming.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm super excited about this. Do you mind telling us a little bit about your background and your journey on how you became a yogi and a writer and a mental health coach?
Yeah, sure. I find it always quite hard to like summarize myself within a minute, but I'll try go for it. So I've been a practitioner of yoga for the past 11 years and teaching it for the past 7, plus writing my whole life. And guiding people to find their peace within is definitely one of the biggest, if not the biggest passion in my life. I feel like through my own personal journey with grief, heartbreak, and all of that, I've been able to navigate quite well. Obviously, also being weak and vulnerable in the side of it, but also just opening up to love and really teaching people the power of opening your heart up and how we truly do all have an inner healer within us.
Wow, that's incredible. So, something that I really wanted to talk about today to connect with your background is really forgiving yourself and learning to let go. Can you talk a little bit more about what it means to forgive yourself and to let go of things that no longer serve you purpose?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's a big topic for like so many of us, if not all of us, because, I feel like we are really like the worst friends to ourselves. Like, we can be our worst enemy or we can be our best cheerleader. And like finding my way through my healing journey, I've really noticed now the power of being able to forgive myself for all that I've been through, all the phases, all the versions of myself, all the experiences opens up so much more space in my heart for love and light, meeting like minded people like yourself, making community online, and it just brings you like, yeah, forgiveness is just breaks you free, breaks you free from like toxic vibes in your life and also allows you to accept and move on, and I think a lot of the time these days there's just so much pressure to always be perfect.
Mhm.
And like when you notice that there's so much power in being imperfect and being yourself, you're able to just like live your life as you are and like who you are.
How do you feel healing those aspects, those areas of your life, and forgiving yourself and learning to let go can improve relationships within not only yourself, but the people around you?
Yeah, that's a really good question because it truly does trickle down. You've heard of that like trickle down effect that like when you
Mhm.
learn to love yourself and accept yourself, are you truly then available to accept other people's love, to show up for yourself means to show up for others.
Mhm.
And I never really understood that back then. I was always like, prioritizing my peace. I didn't really know what that meant and like healing my wounds and all of that. Cause I do have to say, I'm just like a helper. Like, I just love helping people and I love being there for people. But I didn't know back then, back years ago, that like putting people before myself doesn't allow me to truly be myself and show up for myself. So, in order, to really do that, I've noticed that my relationships thrive way better because I can just be there for them, but not take on their energy and their responsibility. It's just like another handling, another form of showing up for yourself and showing up for others. I mean, it's all about balance, yourself, right? It's like a bit of both, but like, I think that's the hardest part in it for people. Like, how do you find that balance? How do you, prioritize yourself, but not be egoistic? And
Mm.
how can you be there for people, but not like take on their responsibility?
Yeah, I think a lot of times it's hard to find that balance of like kind of like what you said of not being egotistic, but also still being there for others. So I think really learning to find a balance. What are some things that have helped you with self forgiveness, like practical tools or tips?
Yeah, that's also true because I guess like forgiving yourself is an act, right? Like it's an act of love. And I think when you ask me that, like the biggest thing is every day truly forgiving myself for like things that maybe make me feel guilty or make me feel bad. Um Forgiving myself every day is like looking in the mirror and loving myself even if I get wrinkles now I'm getting older, or I see all my gray hairs coming and I'm like, it's like all those little things that I notice that I'm like, no, but I look in the mirror and I'm like, it's good, like this is you and I love you, and like that in its form is the biggest form of acceptance and forgiveness, right? Because you're just like learning to love everyday you and not just like striving to be a perfect way, but showing up every day and who you are.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think one of the most beautiful things is loving yourself for where you are. It's so easy for us to make goals on how we want to look, where we want to be, who we want to hang around with, and the whole nine yards. But we just need to look at ourselves in the mirror and be like, I love you for who you are now. So don't be so hard
Exactly.
on yourself. Totally.
Yeah, and we can say it, but it's actually it's one of those, isn't it? It's so easy to say, but it's so hard to put into practice. And in my self-help book, Chill Out and Cheer Up, I was 21 when I wrote it, but I just lost my best friend, and it was kind of like love letters to myself, but also to other people, because I was like, hey, we're so hard on ourselves, like you just said, like why are we so hard on ourselves? It's our society, it's our culture, it's the pressure of like the modern day world always striving to like, be the best and show up and success and career and family. Like, how are we supposed to do all of this?
That's true. It really goes down like the compassion route. What role does self compassion play in the journey of self forgiveness?
Yeah, compassion is so big. Like, um, I think compassion, I mean, if we like look at it in a biblical term, it's like loving yourself and your neighbor as you want to be treated.
Mhm.
Um, and I think when you truly notice like the benefits of treating everyone how you want to be treated, like it's just a trickle effect or it's a reflection of you. Like, I notice these days, like my kind self, like I've always been kind, but I've now truly noticed the power of like how I can combat negativity or critic with being kind. And then like the person's vibe just totally changes with me, because they know I'm not there to be horrible. I'm not there to like judge them. Maybe that also like, not judging, like just being there and showing compassion, showing care and kindness, it's like the greatest combat to like negativity.
That's so true. I feel the same way. I think it takes I've heard a quote and it said it takes three positive thoughts to cancel out one negative thought. So it's obviously easier said than done, but it is doable. And I think that like a lot of times when people like who are super kind and super giving, it's easy for them to get taken advantage of as well. And I think that's like a vulnerable place to be. So it can just go kind of like both ways. It's like learning how to balance that, maybe go into boundaries.
Yeah, that's also a very good point.
Yeah.
Yeah. Boundaries, I didn't really know what they were like 4 years ago. And now it's like a practice, right? Like you just have to practice it. Like setting your boundaries means prioritizing yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I literally before, like kind of like you, 3 years ago, I didn't know what boundaries were. And now it's like everyday practice kind of thing. So it's incredible. Kind of going back onto the letting go topic, sometimes we hold on to things that aren't good for us, even though we know they're not good for us. What are some ways that we can learn to let them go?
Yeah, I mean, you know how our brain works. I think our brain can sometimes be out for us, you know? And so,
Mhm.
like, if you, let's say, practice like the same thing over and over again in your head that you feel bad for, then obviously
Mhm.
that neurotransmitter is just gonna like repeat itself. It's the same, like you just said, with combating a negative thought. But like if you're able to just literally trigger your awareness, like I think self awareness is such a great tool in this aspect. If you're able to take yourself away from yourself in a way, like look down on yourself and what you're thinking, this kind of objectivity of like, oh, I am not my thoughts.
Mhm.
Um, you're able to completely let go of any negative emotion that's held to whatever you're feeling, whatever situation you're in. So let's say, I don't know, I feel guilty for shouting at my kid or my partner or at my friends, just like very sporadically out of nowhere. And then, your brain, you're just like repeating that to yourself. You're like, oh, I feel so bad. And you feel worse and worse. Like, obviously, the more you repeat it, I mean, it's the same, like I just said, with positive like thoughts, that you feel better, right? But then if you're able to just like notice, okay, let me just get myself out of this. And, like as a yoga and meditation teacher too, the transformative power of affirmations and
Mhm.
mantras like has changed my life. Like I've practiced it for so long now. Like I make my own mantras in different seasons of my life, different phases of my life. One that really helped me back then was I honor my growth and trust my path. It
Mm.
was from my first ebook during Corona when I went through a breakup. My parents were getting a divorce. I lost my job. I didn't know where I was living. Like everything broke down on me. And I was like, okay, I honor my growth and trust my path. Even if I don't feel it right now, I'll just repeat it and repeat it until the minute I feel it. And then when I like really like leaned into that feeling, I noticed I was like, wow, you know yourself as a writer, like words are power.
Yeah.
Like
Wow.
really depends how you speak to yourself is how good of a life you can get. I know that's like super simplified right now, but like you really just have to take note of how you speak to yourself, like take yourself away, I guess that's also meditation in a way, or like mindfulness, you know be more careful, and then adjust the way you speak to yourself, and then you adjust your life, like so much more light and love can come in then.
It's a simple yet very powerful and effective tool, in my opinion, because if we're talking to ourselves and telling ourselves whether it's negative or a positive thing, we're always listening to ourselves. And the way that we talk to ourselves is what the outcome will be. You tell yourself that you love
Yeah,
yourself, you're going to radiate more love and more positivity. But if you tell yourself, oh, I don't feel good, or I'm so upset about this, which is valid. I think it's valid to acknowledge your feelings, but don't
yeah,
stay in them. Say
yeah,
something that's I've been learning is acknowledge them by being like, okay, like this upset me, but there's a positive to this, or there's a solution to this situation. So it's not as bad as it seems.
yeah. And in what you're saying, like acknowledging, becoming aware, you question it. Like you
Mm-hmm.
question yourself. Why am I feeling this way? Like,
Mm-hmm.
was it that bad? Why did I fear that part? Or why was I scared? And then you're able to like literally defeat the doubt, defeat the thought that, or whatever is bringing you down. you know, Journaling and writing and practicing yoga, dancing, going on a walk, being in nature. There's so many tools in that toolbox of mindfulness that can allow you to let go and look within. I mean, that's just the key, right? We need to stop looking on the outside for fulfillment and look within.
Absolutely. It always starts within. It starts with what you say to yourself, what you feed yourself, even the people that you surround yourself with, or even your environment in your bedroom. That's a very safe space as well.
Yeah, when you say it like that, like everything is so sacred, like our sacred space, in us and around us. It's like all the little things, you know?
Can you share with us a personal story or example where letting go had led you to unexpected positive outcomes?
When you asked me that, like, so I have always kind of had a word for the year. I know that
Hmm.
it's like, going around now and I love it, but last year my word was acceptance. And it came to me the start of last year because I felt like I was really beating myself up again, like for studying again at 27. Even though I really enjoy it now, I'm becoming a kindergarten teacher and I'm loving it. But the language, like German and just like everything, I was just like, oh, come on, like just accept. Just accept where you are. And like, I remember whatever I was going through, I was like, acceptance. And like, it was like so transformative, Anetta. I was literally just like, wow. Like, it just freed up all of this space for me and then was like enabling me to approach every situation or setback in a positive manner. So, like, I had a fail last year where I brought out a short book, a friendship manual, and
Hmm.
it was a big fail. Like, I'm not gonna lie, like, I think I also had too high expectations, which also plays a big role in letting go. Don't have expectations. And yeah, like, I was let down because it was like with a German bookstore here, and then, I thought that through that I would become a bestseller. I would have my book in a bookshop and everything. But in the end, it just didn't sit well with me. I don't need to say anything bad about it, but like it just didn't really work out. And then I was like, okay, this has failed and it's fine. I'm going to learn through it. And I'm going to still keep this friendship manual because I poured my heart out into it last year. And I do feel like a lot of people will benefit from it because, as you know, loneliness is one of the biggest epidemics of our time right now. And so people need connection. And so I was like, okay, if this didn't work out, I'm going to bring it out next year, bigger and better, and collaborate with others. And so I'm collaborating with other apps now, just to kind of spread the word of like connection and friendship. And I'm going to bring it out this year on July the 31st on Friendship Day. Like it made me think more into my strategy than rather last year how it made me notice I just went in for it because I was like, yes, I want to do this, like as a creator, I feel like I just put myself into a lot sometimes. But yeah, I beat myself up a bit and then I was like, Grace, whatever, like it's failed, but it doesn't mean that it's going to fail again. Like there is always lessons for you to open up to in failure. So also after meeting you, like I feel like we both spoke about this together and then we were like, when you notice like your failures actually like hold a deeper meaning, oh my gosh, can you grow exponentially?
That's so true. It's like they're not really failures. I always like to look at the word fail as first attempt in learning. So it's not really a failure because you went out there and you tried. It didn't work, and it's redirecting you to something better. And I think that
Yeah.
there's so much beauty in that. And that's something that I want to share more is that there is so much beauty in failure. The in the process of becoming who you're meant to be, there's so much beauty to it. You just have to stay the course and be consistent to figuring
Yeah.
out what you want and how you get there
Yeah.
because the goal can stay the same, but the route may change and that's okay. You wanted to write this book, friendship book, and you had a goal. The first route didn't work. So it just rerouted you to a better route. And now it's leading you to so many different directions. And I think there's so much beauty in that.
Yeah, and I love your perspective. You do always say stuff like this, and I'm like, it's so true, like when you open up your mind to the beauty within rerouting yourself. I like that, because we see a lot like when we have goals or when, especially like with our pursuits in life, like no matter it be career or life or personal pursuits, you always are like, oh no, but I have to go there. And then if it doesn't work out, it can be like fatal for you because you beat yourself up about it. And, obviously it's hard to then let go. But if then you're able to find the optimism and be like, oh, but maybe God actually turned me in this direction so that I would learn from it and love through it so much more. And at the end, hold so much more light for others to learn from your mistakes too. I mean, that's why we're here, in my opinion, to love and to learn, you know?
To love and to learn. That's so true. It's beautifully said. Like, we're here for one another and we're here to help each other. And once we realize that, that's when everything changes in the best possible way. So I completely agree. How are forgiveness and letting go connected in the healing process?
Forgiveness and letting go in the healing process are like two vital ingredients, I would say. Because when you're healing, you can isolate yourself quite a lot, or you can
Mhm.
really like find it hard to navigate your emotions because you go through a lot, you know, like I
Mhm.
feel like when you're healing, you see your shadows, you see your past, and you see everything because you're like in this process of wanting to grow. But, you know, obviously, when you want to grow, you have to go through what you go through and not just ignore it. So it's obviously being able to like dig through everything you've been through. It doesn't mean that you have to live through it again, but just reflect on it. And, you know, like we were saying before, it's about actually digging through all of those past versions of yourself, forgiving all those past versions, showing yourself grace, showing yourself
Mhm.
kindness, and enabling then that space in your heart to open up for acceptance, because then it's a healing journey and it's a healing process. It's not just healing, you know, as yourself, you know, like that healing isn't linear. It's a path, or it's many paths. um and it's never ended. Like, I don't think there's ever going to be a point where I'm like, yeah, I'm healed,
Mm.
and or yeah, I'm my best version of myself. No, like right now I have to say like I'm probably the best that I've maybe ever been, but I don't even know because every version of myself goes through different things, you know, and age and all that. But like, I'm coming to the end of my therapy for 3.5 years after coming out of the mental clinic for then more than half a year after my breakdown. And now I'm really noticing, like, I actually am okay. Like, I don't think I need therapy anymore. Like, 3.5 years has been amazing. You know, I've been very grateful. Um, but now being able to be like, okay, and now I have the space and time to open up my own kind of community and invite others in and let them learn from what I've learned, you know, and through that, you're able to see that healing is a journey, and it's a journey together. It's not just a journey on your own. Like, we all need to heal in this world. We need more healing and
Yeah.
less hating.
Something that you said that really stuck out to me was that you are healing and you are learning to forgive, but it's a continuous thing. It's not just, oh, like one day, oh, I think I'm healed now. No,
Yeah.
like it's a continuous journey. And I think that's a really important topic as well, because I think a lot of times, like, we'll be like, oh, I can't wait until I'm healed. Oh, I can't wait until XYZ. But
Yeah.
are you? Because we're always, if we're always learning and growing and changing, then there's always healing to do with it and forgiveness as well. So I like how you said that it's a continuous journey, not there's no deadline for it.
Yeah, totally. Because I mean, through that, consistency and showing up plays a vital role as well. Because if one day you're like, oh yeah, I'm done, then you maybe actually just go back to square one because maybe your ego will start to arise. You know, it's like finding the balance, like we were saying before, like being consistent in your healthy habits, showing up for yourself every day. And when you've not shown up for yourself, forgiving yourself, you know, it's a whole freaking game. Like, it's a ball game of like balancing all the effects and acknowledgements of one's emotions, being able to navigate through that. And even though I wrote about fear, pressure, and doubt when I was 21, nearly 10 years ago, in my self help book, I find it really funny because one of my friends just recently started reading it, and Pressure is the first chapter, and she's like, "Oh, I really feel for this." And I was like, "It's so funny because read it and I'm like, yeah, it's obviously a different version of myself, but then it reminds myself too. I'm like, oh yeah, good advice, Grace. Like, I still need to read my words. Like, you will need to still read your words. Like, we will always need to remind ourselves of things that we've already learned, but maybe forgotten. Do you know what I mean? So it's never like you can just close a chapter on pressure and I'm never going to feel pressure again. It just means that I'll be able to handle, like, I do handle pressure way better now. I do handle fear way better because I have so many strategies that I've learned over this decade that enables me to, like I said before, dig into my toolbox, a mindfulness toolbox, and, like, draw or yoga or create whatever is there for me in that moment. But it doesn't mean that, like, I'll never feel it again. I'm only human. We're only human, and we never know what's going to come. Like, change is always on our doorstep. So, you know?
That's so true. I think it's staying humble enough to go back to even reread books, re-listen to
Mm,
audios, whether it's something you said, you wrote, or somebody else that you've learned. Because you know how they say, like, when you watch a movie once, it's great, but then you go back and watch it the second time and you notice things that you didn't notice the first time.
yeah. Like in Disney, when they put all the
Yes.
little signs in.
Yes, I think that's the same thing with either reading, listening to podcasts, or just going back and having another conversation with a friend, because maybe you'll pick up things you didn't the first time. So it's
Yeah.
very important to continue the journey of healing and learning and growing.
Yeah. And what you're saying right now basically just comes to me reflection. Like, that's
Yeah.
just all loads of manners of reflecting. And when you are able to be self aware and reflect, then you're able to really digest, like, oh, what can I learn from that? How can I react better in a different way? And, I think there we have to say, like, the power of reflection, in no matter what form it takes, will always provide us growth.
Absolutely. What's the biggest lesson that you've learned from letting go of something or someone in your life?
The biggest lesson I've learned of letting go of someone or something in my life, oh my gosh. It's like, when you're asked a question and so much comes up and I don't even know which one to pinpoint.
Actually, let me just write you an essay on it.
Yeah. So which person and which situation and what year? Because
What year?
let's just take it back to just recent years then. Okay. I mean, when I want to just reflect on basically the last 4 years and not 10 years of my life, like, I think my mental breakdown is probably one of the hardest things I had to accept and let go of because I didn't want my mental health to, like, personify me, like having depression and being diagnosed with certain things that I was like, hell, like, is this now me?
Mhm.
That was really hard to digest. And when I think about it now, like, I was so ashamed that I was in the clinic. I was like, why am I here out of all people? And then, because I'm known to all my friends and family as this happy go lucky person. And then I was like, hey, but there's, like, a, like, jewel within this that, like, even me, even the well-being coach, the yoga teacher, the writer that is freaking self-help, I was
Mhm.
like, it's okay. Like, it happens to anyone. And whoever's listening, like, I really invite you to never feel ashamed for who you are, for your mental health diagnosis, or your chronic disease, or whatever that maybe in our society you are described as or personified by. But, like, it doesn't mean that is you as a whole. Like, you are love. And that took me a long time to, like, grapple in my own way because I just, like, for like a few years then, like from 2020 to like 22, yeah, it was like, oh my gosh, like, how can I let go of this? But then I thought, well, actually, I don't need to let go of it. I can actually use it. Like, the fact that I was in the clinic, I can be vulnerable and show up and talk about it like this and tell people, okay, it's okay if you're actually breaking down, having a hard part of your life, like, being vulnerable in that side of it makes you strong and actually gives you resilience and not ignoring that side of your life. It's
Mhm.
like you yourself with your divorce, like, you
Mhm.
could hide that away, but no, rather you're like, opening up about it so that you can help others through similar situations and feel okay as well, you know? So, like, it's just an invitation, I think. That's maybe what helped me. It's an invitation for others to feel okay with how they are or their dealings in life. Because come on, like, not everyone has a perfect life. No one does. We all have different dealings in life, and I think it's just really seeing your shadows and then keep showing up for like who you are right now and who your future self and past self, and accepting all of those in their own ways has made you who you are right now, that beautiful person. Yeah.
I like how you said to just be vulnerable because it's so easy for us to isolate ourselves. It kind of like snowballs to if we don't open up, because if we isolate, it's one snowball. And then we are not vulnerable and we're keeping it into ourselves, the things that we were going through, then it just keeps snowballing and going and going, and it just gets bigger
Yeah.
and bigger. And I think that also can lead us to for us to have a breakdown, whether it's emotional or mental or even physical. And it's not a healthy way to deal with it. And honestly, like when I was going through like my challenging times with my ex-husband, like I didn't know how to talk about it in a healthy way. I was just talking. I was like saying, whatever happened, happened. I had no filter. But then I
Okay.
started to heal and to work on myself, and I started to learn how to talk about it in a healthy way. And there's so much power in healing and like accepting those situations that you went through, healing from them, and then sharing them in healthy ways, because there's so much power in vulnerability. Our
Yeah.
stories are not for us, they're for others. There's so many people out there going through things that we went through, and they're waiting for us to overcome them and share them so they know that they're not alone.
Yeah, so well said. I think we all definitely have a voice within us that also needs to be seen, needs to be heard, so that others can feel better through that too. It's like that mirror effect again, isn't it? What you reflect to others reflects back on you, and in that vulnerability, there's so much more space for being yourself. You don't hide yourself, you be yourself and invite others through that to be themselves.
Absolutely. You were talking about yoga and how has helped you on your journey. Is yoga something that you were doing before you started like your healing journey and self-love, or was it something that you found during?
So I found yoga when I was 19, when I had just started uni.
Mm.
And it's like literally the most common way that everyone, I would say, starts yoga with Adrian on YouTube. And she just came to me and I was just like, I've never been a sport person. Like, I never really liked sports and so I was just always like, yeah, it wasn't my thing, but like I wanted to keep fit in the mind and the body. And then I thought, oh, this is so cool. And so I got into it, really like balanced me and like brought me less, stress, obviously with uni as well back then. And then me and my friend, like, we made the yoga society in our uni. And back then it wasn't a trend. Like, this is 11 years ago. And I remember we had like 10 people. And then 3 years after, we had 200 members.
Wow.
Yeah, from like the rugby, also guys, like, because everyone was noticing that yoga has so many, like, boundless benefits in so many areas, like flexibility, but also flexibility in the mind. So, yeah, I found it through YouTube, and then I went to India with my yogi friend, and after we graduated, because we were like, let's do this, like, and let's train together. And we went to Rishikesh, the capital of yoga, like where yoga was born. Because I'm always like, if I want to do something, I want to do it like right, like I
Yeah.
want to know like the culture, I want to know everything. And so we were in the river Ganges, and like we could see the Himalayas, and it was just so like wow, like being in that ashram, that will always stick out to me as one of the most awakening times of my life, because I really like dedicated myself fully to working on my mind, spirit, and body. And since then, it's a part of my lifestyle. Like I wake up every morning with it because it's like my way of finding myself, my balance.
That's beautiful. You were talking about, because you're a writer, so you were talking about your book, Chill Out and Cheer Up. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that and how you came about that and how it's evolved?
Yeah, sure. Because that's also been like a while since I wrote it when I think about it. Like, as I mentioned, I was 21 when I wrote it, when I just lost my best friend. And I was living in Sevilla in Spain. And that also came to me at the right time because I was really able to heal through the nature and through the beauty of that city and the people. And yeah, I then had it on the back burner basically for like years. Like, how many years? Like 4 or 5 years? Because guess what? In my head, I was like, no one's going to read this.
Those negative thoughts.
Yeah, like it's so funny. It gets everyone. I was like, as if someone's going to read this. Like, I was really doubting myself and I was like, oh, one day. But like how bad it is to just say one day because then that will
Mm.
never happen. You have to take action. And so I was like in the clinic in 2021 and I was like, it's now or never. I am in the most vulnerable part of my life. And I wrote my introduction there, like literally saying that. And I was like, this is the time. Like, this is when I will self publish it. And since then, I've helped thousands of people find happiness and peace. And it's like the biggest gift that I could ever imagine, to help all of these people through my words that I didn't even believe in back then. Like just hearing your work to be a masterpiece, like it blew my mind the other day. I was just like, wow, like this is a stranger from another part of the world, and they're just like, you talk to me like a friend, like that we have the ability within us to write from our soul, write from our heart, like pour out our heart onto paper. I think it's one of the most beautiful things ever. And I've always loved to read and write. And so, like, that's why I love reading, because I feel like it's a part of everyone's soul that they put into paper. It's so poetic right now, but it's so true. Like, it's so beautiful. And so, yeah, Chill Out and Cheer Up is a 10-step guide into like finding a more fulfilling life. And basically, 5 chapters are like focused on negative emotions like doubt and pressure. And then the other ones are like, nature and solitude and little things, and basically an all in one kind of pocket guide into like how you can lead a more mindful and fulfilling life. And I feel like that was ages ago now, that I definitely would love to like, bring more books out, and that's why I'm so happy about this friendship manual coming out this year. But you yourself know, like it's one of those that like what you've put your heart and soul out into, like purely and authentically, it will always come back to you, and in so many forms. And I never knew that. Like, I never knew the power of that when I was writing it. I basically wrote it because I was grieving my best friend. Like, I'll never see him again. Like, it was the worst pain I've ever felt. And I was like, I always tried to help him be happy, basically, in essence. And it was really hard because he could just never, like, and then I was like, okay, I'm going to write this in a book so I can help other people, like, it just never stopped within me, this fire to help others.
I think that's such a beautiful story on how you came about your book and how it was created. It's like sometimes like we let those negative thoughts get to us until we're at a situation where it's like I'm going to do this because it's going to help myself, but then not only you in that moment, it's going to help so many other people. And I think there's so much beauty in that. It's incredible. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you for letting me. Kind of came out of
Absolutely.
nowhere.
Absolutely. So before we wrap things up, do you mind telling us where can people find you and where can people support you?
Yeah, sure. So I am actually now. Something that's been on my heart for ages to make a community online. And I've now found a really lovely platform for like healing workshops, journaling workshops, and coaching sessions with me. And it's like a membership, and it's called Healing Hearts Hub. With Grace, that's my name on Instagram now, and it's basically this year's project is to hopefully help so many other people in a community heal together on an exponential level, because as we've been saying, together we're better. We are able to reflect better, we're able to grow in so many more ways than just being alone. And yeah, I am always here to help others in their healing journeys, because we always need a bit of guidance and we can't do this alone.
That's so true. Thank you so much for sharing with us today. I'll have all of your links linked down in the show notes below so people can stay in touch. Thank you, Grace.
Thank you, Annetta.